Most people set up autopay and think the job is done. Payment goes out, nothing gets missed, no late mark, no problem. And to be fair, that logic makes sense. Late payments do real damage, so of course automating that part feels smart. The problem is that autopay fixes one thing and doesn't touch the other. Most people don't notice that until they check their score and think, why is this stuck? Or why did it just drop after a month where I spent more than usual? And this is why people trust autopay so much. It's not a dumb assumption, it actually sounds right. When most people learn about credit, the first thing they hear is, pay on time every time, that's the rule. It gets repeated constantly, and it's correct. A payment history is the single largest factor in your score. So the natural conclusion is, if payments are automatic and always on time, then credit should more or less take care of itself. And autopay does deliver on that promise. If you have it set up and the account has enough money to cover it, you're not going to get late payment marks. That part works exactly as advertised. The mistake is that people take, I won't pay late, and turn that into my credit is being handled well. Those are different statements. The first is about payment history. The second is about the full picture. And autopay only controls the first one. There's also a mental thing happening here. Automation feels responsible, it feels like you handled it. Like you did the grown-up thing and built a system so you don't have to think about it anymore. That feeling of having it handled makes people less likely to look closely at what's actually going on. And credit card issuers know this. They make autopay extremely easy to set up. They want you to have it not because it hurts you, but because it keeps you paying regularly while keeping you somewhat disengaged from the details. That's not some conspiracy, that's just how the system works. But the result is the same. A lot of people are on autopay, feel covered, and still lose points they didn't need to lose. Here's the part people miss. Paying on time and reporting low utilization are not the same thing. They affect your score differently, and autopay only handles one of them. Payment history, whether you pay by the due date, is the biggest scoring factor. Around 35% of your score in most common models. Autopay covers that part. Credit utilization, how much of your available credit you're using at the time it gets reported, is the second biggest factor. Around 30%, and this is the part autopay doesn't help with. When people hear utilization, they usually think it means how much they spend in general. It doesn't, it's a snapshot. It's whatever your balance happens to be when the credit bureaus check. And they're generally checking around your statement closing date, the moment the bank generates your monthly statement. So the real question isn't just whether you pay in full. It's what the balance looked like when the snapshot was taken. Those are different questions with different answers. You can pay your balance in full every single month, never carry interest, be completely responsible, and still be reporting high utilization every month if your balance is high when the statement closes. The bureaus don't see what happens after. They see the number on the statement. Autopay usually kicks in after the statement closes. That's just how the timing works. The reporting already happened, the snapshot was already taken. The payment comes after that, and for utilization purposes, it doesn't change what already got reported. Now let's talk about the thresholds, because not all utilization hits the same. Below 10% is generally where you want to be if you're actively trying to optimize. Not 10% exactly, roughly below 10% per card and overall. At that point, utilization usually isn't working against you much. You're showing you have access to credit and you're barely touching it. That signals low risk to the scoring models. Once you cross 30%, most scoring models start treating it as a meaningful negative signal. This is where your score can start taking a noticeable hit. It doesn't mean everything collapses, but the system is starting to see you as someone using a significant chunk of their available credit, which statistically correlates with higher risk. At 50%, it gets worse. You're using half your available credits. Even with a perfect payment history, reporting 50% utilization consistently is going to suppress your score in a noticeable way. At that point, your file starts looking heavier than you probably think it does. Maxing out a card 90%, 95%, 100% is a serious red flag in the scoring models. Even once, even if you pay it off completely the next month. A maxed out card in a snapshot looks like financial strain. The models don't know you're about to pay it off. They only see what was there when they looked. And here's something people often miss. It's not just your overall utilization that matters. Individual card utilization matters too. Your overall utilization is your total balances across all cards divided by your total limits. That number matters, but each individual card also has its own ratio and that's tracked separately. So in real life, you can't just manage the average. You also have to watch each card. A card with a $1,000 limit and an $800 balance is reporting 80% utilization on that specific card, even if your other cards bring your overall number down to something more reasonable. The model sees both. There's a specific situation a lot of people have run into without understanding what happened. You make a large purchase. A flight, a home repair, something significant but not unusual. You know you're going to pay it off when the bill comes. Bill comes, you pay it, done. Then you check your score and it dropped. Sometimes by a lot, and yeah, that feels unfair. You paid it, you didn't carry a balance. You didn't miss anything, so why did the score go down? Because the statement already closed with that large balance on it. The reporting happened before you paid. The bureaus saw the high utilization snapshot. Your payment came afterward and doesn't change what was already recorded for that cycle. Your score dropped because of the snapshot, not because you were broke or irresponsible. This is exactly the auto-pay problem showing up in a different context. The timing of payment doesn't affect what gets reported. Utilization was already locked in the moment the statement closed. Once you understand that, a lot of those random-looking score moves stop feeling random. Score went up, you probably had a lower balance at closing time that month. Score went down, you probably had a higher one. The pattern follows the snapshot, not the final payment. The good news is this part can move faster than people think. Unlike payment history, where a single missed payment can stick around for years, utilization resets with each new reporting cycle. It's based on current balances, not historical behavior. What this means is that if you've been reporting high utilization for months and you change your habits, your score can start to reflect that relatively quickly. Not overnight, but within a billing cycle or two, a real change in reported utilization will show up as a real change in your score. This is one of the few parts of credit where you can actually see results without waiting forever. You can't undo a missed payment from 2 years ago. You can fix high utilization starting this billing cycle. That's worth knowing. So here's what this looks like in real life without turning it into a second job. The first thing you need to do is find the statement closing date for each credit card you carry. Not the due date, the closing date. The due date is when your payment needs to be in. The closing date is when the billing cycle ends and your statement gets generated. They're typically 3 to 4 weeks apart. Finding the closing date usually isn't hard. Log into your card account online or in the app, look for account details or billing information, and find where it says statement closing date or billing cycle end date. If you can't find it there, look at a past statement. The date it was generated is the closing date for that cycle. If you really can't find it, call the number on the back and ask. They'll tell you. Once you have the closing date for each card, set a recurring reminder 2 to 3 days before each one. Not the day of, you want a buffer in case a payment takes a day or two to process. When the reminder comes up, check the balance on that card. If it's above roughly 10% of your credit limit and you have the money available, make a manual payment to bring it below that threshold before the statement closes. You don't necessarily have to pay all of it. You just need to get the reported number down. After the statement closes with that low balance, your auto-pay can still run on the due date for whatever remains. If you brought the balance to $50 before closing, auto-pay pays $50. If you brought it to zero, there's nothing left to pull. Either way, the utilization problem is already handled. If you have multiple cards, you're doing this for each one. It sounds like a lot more than it actually is. Most people have 2 or 3 cards. That's a few minutes of attention per month once the habit is built. For the first couple of months, just treat it like a test run. Make the payment, wait for the statement to close, then check what actually got reported. You can usually see the reported balance in a credit monitoring app. It updates a few days after the statement closes. Confirm that what you did actually resulted in a lower number being reported. Once you've seen it work a couple of times, you'll trust the process. Now about reporting zero across the board. Some people take this too far and try to get every card to report zero. On paper, that sounds perfect. In practice, it's usually fine but not always optimal. Most scoring models respond well to very low utilization. They don't necessarily respond best to absolute zero. There's a difference between using your credit responsibly and keeping balances low versus having credit but showing no activity at all. A small reported balance, something like 1% to 5%, on at least one card tends to signal that you're an active user who's staying well within your limits. Reporting zero everywhere can sometimes score slightly lower than reporting a small balance in the right place. It's not a dramatic effect. It's not something to obsess over. But if you're aiming for maximum optimization, consider letting one card report something small, $20, $30, whatever a tiny percentage of its limit looks like, while keeping everything else at or near zero. Now, when is this actually worth the effort? If your score is already in a range where a few points won't change your approval odds or your rate, this probably won't change your life much. At that point, micromanaging utilization is mostly optimization for the sake of optimization. Where it actually matters is when you're trying to cross a threshold. Trying to get from 620 to 680. Preparing to apply for a mortgage in the next few months. Planning to open a card with better terms. In those situations, a 20 or 30-point swing from better utilization management can make a real difference in approval odds, in interest rates, in what you're offered. It also matters if your score has felt weirdly stuck. If you've been doing everything right and the number isn't moving, utilization is often the explanation. Fixing it can unlock progress that's been blocked. If you're in a stable situation with no near-term credit applications and a score already in good shape, it's fine to be less precise about this. The fundamentals will hold the score without detailed management. But understanding the mechanism is still useful because life changes. You'll probably want to apply for something eventually. There's one more thing here that almost nobody explains well: credit cycling. This is what it looks like. You have a card with a $2,000 limit. During the month, you spend $1,800 on it. Before the statement closes, you pay it down to $200. Then you spend another $1,600. Then you pay it down again. You're cycling through the same limit multiple times within one billing cycle. From the reporting side, this can still leave you with a low balance at closing, so your score might look fine. But some banks monitor for this pattern, and it can raise a flag. If you keep running a card up and paying it down over and over in the same cycle, the bank can read that as stress, even if the bureau never sees a problem. Banks have their own risk systems, and they're not the same thing as your credit score. They can decide to lower your limit, increase scrutiny on your account, or in rare cases, close it. It doesn't happen from one cycle, but it's worth knowing the bank is watching patterns beyond just what gets reported. If your limit is low but your spending is high, the cleaner move is simpler. Pay before the statement closes so the reported balance stays low. Or ask for a higher limit so the same spending doesn't keep pushing you into ugly utilization. A limit increase, depending on how the bank handles it, can sometimes happen without a hard inquiry. Here's the full picture before wrapping up. Your credit score is built from several factors. Payment history is the biggest. Utilization is the second biggest and the most controllable in the short term. AutoPay handles payment history. It's a genuine safety net for that piece. But it doesn't do anything about utilization. Utilization is determined by what your balance looks like when the statement closes, which happens before AutoPay ever touches the bill. The practical version is simple: know the closing dates. Check balances a few days before. Pay down anything that's too high before the statement cuts. Let a low number report. Keep AutoPay there as the backup for the due date. For most people with 2 or 3 cards, this is a 15-minute-a-month habit that produces real results. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You don't need to hit exactly 1% on every card. You need to be generally low, under 10% per card and overall. Hit that, stay consistent, the score reflects it. One thing worth writing down somewhere: the closing date on each card and the limit on each card. Those 2 numbers are all you need to manage this. Once you have them, the process takes care of itself. The real problem is that people turn on AutoPay and stop looking. They assume that because payments are automated, credit management is automated too. It isn't. One part is automated. The other part, what gets reported when it gets reported, and how high that balance is, still needs a little human attention. You weren't stupid for trusting AutoPay. You were dealing with the problem you knew about. Most people don't even realize there's a second problem until they start wondering why their score still isn't where they want it. Now you know what that second problem is. And more importantly, you know it's not that hard to fix. A few dates, a few reminders. A few manual payments at the right time. That's really it, your score responds to what gets reported. Start managing that part better and the score usually follows.